Oh, hello. Welcome once again to Stuff and Things, where I like to talk about stuffs and occasionally even things. I'm your good friend Bradley, and today is a very pleasant Sunday Stuff and Things. My mic cable is plugged in. That is good. And on this very pleasant Sunday Stuff and Things, we have many stuffs and things to talk about. We will do another reading from EYE of Argon, The EYE of Argon by Jim Theis. We'll talk about some upcoming videos that we have coming up. In fact, I just recorded a first impressions video for a new pipe blend. We have some stuff on Stuff and Things Plays. A lot of stuff. That word gets used quite a bit. We will talk about perhaps a new format for a video in the future that I'd like your input on. I will talk a little bit about some of the feedback you gave on my fiance and I. Perhaps, possibly, situation works out that we could maybe take a trip this year, where we may be going. And I also want to ask your opinion on some other stuff that we may put on the channel. We'll see. I've got some ideas, some stuff going on. And then we will get to your questions, of course, in hashtag #AskStuffandThings. But first, as I mentioned, we will start with our reading from the science fiction masterpiece, The EYE of Argon. I know some of you are not impressed with The EYE of Argon, but I'm enjoying it. I think it's hilarious, and I like reading it. I noticed some people put in the comments, they'll have a timestamp saying, like, reading ends at this time. How dare you? How dare you skip over The EYE of Argon? No, you can watch what you want, watch when you want, watch how you want. It's fine. I think this book is great, though, this novella, this masterpiece. And we're going to continue now with The EYE of Argon by Jim Theis. Chapter 4. All knowledge of measuring time had escaped Grigner. When a person is deprived of the sun, moon, and stars, he loses all conception of time as he had previously understood it. It seemed as if years had passed if time were being measured by terms of misery and mental anguish, yet he estimated that his stay had only been a few days in length. He has slept 3 times and had been fed 5 times since his awakening in the crypt. However, when the actions of the body are restricted, its needs are also affected. The need for nourishment and slumber are directly proportional to the functions the body has performed, meaning that when free and active, Grigner may become hungry every 6 hours and witness the desire for sleep every 15 hours, whereas in his present condition, he may encounter the need for food every 10 hours and the want for rest every 20 hours. All methods he had before depended upon were extinct in the dismal pit. Hence, he may have been imprisoned for 10 minutes or 10 years. He did not know, resulting in a disheartened emotion deep within his being. Poor Grigner. The food, if you can honor the moldering lumps of fetid mush to that extent, was borne to him by 2 guards who opened a portal at the top of his enclosure and shoved it to him in wooden bowls, retrieving the food and water bowls from his previous meal at the same time, after which they threw back the bolts on the iron latch and returned to their other duties. Since deprived of all other means of nourishment, Grigner was impelled to eat the tainted slop in order to ward off the pangs, that's spelled very strangely, pangs of starvation. Though as he stuffed it into his mouth with his filthy fingers and struggled to force it down his throat, he imagined it was that which had been spurned by the hounds stationed at various segments of the palace. There was little in the barren vault that could occupy his body or mind. I thought he was going to be, like, forced to work. Or no, maybe he's doing this first and then he has to go to the work, to like the mines. He had paced out the length and width of the enclosure time and time again and tested every granite slab which consisted the walls of the prison in hopes of finding a hidden passage to freedom, all of which was to no avail other than to keep him busy and distract his mind from wandering to thoughts of what he believed was his future. He had memorized the number of strides from one end to the other of the cell and knew the exact number of slabs which made up the bleak dungeon. Numerous schemes were introduced and alternately discarded in turn as they succored, to unravel to him no means of escape, oh my God, which stood the slightest chance of success. Anguish continued to mount as his means of occupation were rapidly exhausted. Suddenly, without no tithe? What? Suddenly without no tithe. He was routed from his contemplations as he detected a faint scratching sound at the end of the crypt opposite him. The sound seemed to be caused by something trying to scrape away at the granite blocks the floor of the enclosure consisted of, the sandy scratching of something like an animal's claws. Grigner gradually groped his way to the other end of the vault, carefully feeling his way along with his hands ahead of him. When a few inches from the wall, a loud penetrating squeal and the scampering of small padded feet reverberated from the walls of the roughly hewn chamber. Grigner threw his hands up to shield his face and flung himself backwards upon his buttocks. A fuzzy form bounded to his hairy chest, burying its talons in his flesh while gnashing towards his throat with its grinding white teeth. Its sour, fetid breaths. He spelled scorching wrong. Scorching the skirming? Oh my lord. Scorching the skirming barbarian's dilating nostrils. Grigner grappled with the flashing flexor muscles of the repugnant body of a gargantuan brown-headed rat, striving to hold its razor teeth from his juicy jugular as its beady gray organs of sight gazed into the flaring emeralds of its prey. Taking hold of the rodent around its lean, growling stomach with both hands, Grigner pried it from his crimson-rent breast, removing small patches of flayed flesh from his chest in the motion between the squalid black claws of the starving beast. Holding the rodent at arm's length, he cupped his right hand over its frothing face, constricting his fingers into a vice-like fist over the quavering head. Retaining his grips on the rat, Grigner flexed his outstretched arms while slowly twisting his right hand clockwise and his left hand counterclockwise motion. The rodent let out a tortured squall, drawing scarlet as it violently dug its foam-flecked fangs into the barbarian's sweating palm, causing his face to contort to an ugly grimace as he cursed beneath his breath. With a loud crack, the rodent head parted from its squirming torso, sending out a sprinkling shower of crimson gore, and trailing a slimy string of disjointed vertebrae, snapped trachea, esophagus, and jugular, disjointed hyoid bone, morose purple stretched hide, and blood-seared muscles. I think that will do it for this week's reading from the Eye of Argon. Tune in next week for more. All right, gang, yet another exciting reading from the Eye of Argon in the bag. Now, I mentioned that I had just recorded a first impressions video, and the blend for which that video was recorded was this one, John Cotton's double pressed Latakia. I've had this in my possession for quite some time, and I finally got around to doing it. I can't even remember how long it's been since I got this. It was part of a nice big package that a very generous viewer sent along. And I guess it was one that I kind of avoided because I'm not a huge fan of Sutliff blends. And this isn't technically a Sutliff blend. I mean, it's manufactured, it's produced by Sutliff, but it's actually blended, I believe, by Russ Ouellette. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I always pronounce it wrong. So I was a little bit intrigued by that, and I decided to do the first impressions video this week. And it's interesting. I'm actually mildly optimistic that I'm going to end up liking this quite a bit. It's the whole concept of this blend. I mean, these John Cotton's blends were, I think, Scottish, and I think they went away in the 80s, something like that. So this is kind of a recreation of some of these blends. I'm not sure if all of the current line are blends that used to exist in the 80s, but this particular blend is supposed to be a way of making a very mellow, kind of well-balanced Latakia blend. Because often when you put Latakia in a blend, it's very obvious, it's very kind of grab you by the shoulders and shake you. The flavor is sometimes off-putting to people who are not used to Latakia. So this blend, because it's actually pressed into a flake, then rubbed out then allowed to breathe for several weeks, then pressed into a crumble cake. The theory is that it will really marry the flavors and mellow those flavors out. And I have to say, on just my first bowl that's only, it's about halfway down, I think they've succeeded in that. It's actually a very mild, very mellow Latakia blend so far. Again, this is just my first bowl for the first impressions video. But I think I like it. And that's kind of weird for me, because usually with Latakia blends, I like them to be a little bit more robust. I enjoy the flavor of Latakia. This avoids the pitfall, again, remember with the caveat that this is only the first bowl. So far, it's avoiding the pitfall that sometimes happens with really mild blends for me, where it just feels like there's nothing there. It's like, I've used the analogy many times where I talk about like vitamin water, where it's just a little mild amount of flavor added to water. And so instead of it being, I don't know, juice or something, it's just water that you accidentally spilled a little bit of flavor in, and I'd rather just drink plain water than water that's just kind of citrusy or kind of like tropical punchy. And that sometimes happens with mild blends or more mild, not full flavored blends. But this one I think's working. So on Wednesday, the first impressions video of John Cotton's double pressed Latakia will be posting. You should check that out, and then the final review will be in 1 or 2 weeks. I'm not sure if it'll be the following week exactly, or maybe another week after that. 2 weeks from when the first impressions video posts, because I may be interspersing another video in between those. But check out the first impressions video this Wednesday. The Bloodborne series is continuing apace on Stuff and Things Plays. There was talk, the streets were talking, that maybe Bloodborne was too easy, that maybe Kevin Lesek, Kevin the Kurt, was too advanced, too overpowered for this game. Don't worry, that's not the case. There will be plenty of deaths, plenty of frustration, plenty of me acting like a maniac because I'm getting so frustrated with the game, but I'm having a great time with it. In fact, how many episodes ahead am I? I think by Wednesday or Thursday, or no, Wednesday or Friday of this coming week, we should be tackling another boss. Made short work of it. We did fine, but the run-up to that boss was filled with a lot of good frustration, some meaty bits of angst for you to enjoy. So check that out every Monday, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on Stuff and Things Plays. Now, several people throughout, I don't know, the last few years since this has kind of been a thing, have suggested that it would be a good idea for me to do some live videos where I guess I would stream it on YouTube live, and you could watch live as the video was being made. You could ask questions, I could interact with the chat. It's something I've considered. It's something that I would have to do at home, so I don't know if a pipe would be part of the equation, but I just want to sort of gauge your interest in that, how many of you would actually want to take part in that, and then also when I should do that. I was thinking it might be cool to record it on a Saturday and then post it as the Sunday Stuff and Things the following Sunday. But because so many of you are spread throughout the entire world, I'm not sure exactly what time would be most convenient for everybody. I know what times would be convenient for me, but I'm on the west coast of the United States, so Pacific Standard Time. And even for people on the East Coast, that could be a little weird. If I was doing it in the evening, it might be too late for them to take part. If I did it early in the morning, then that would kind of shut out a lot of people who are on the other side of the world. Like, if you guys have suggestions, first of all, if you think that you would like to take part in a live video, if you would want to come and interact, let me know. And then also, let me know where you are in the world and kind of what a good time or what times you'd be willing to take part. Because if I can't expect you to be up at 3 in the morning, you know, taking part in a live video with me. So I want to try to throw a net that will be able to grab as many people as possible and for as many people as possible to participate, but I'm just not quite sure when that would be. So I'm I'm mulling this over. I want it to be something that we do try. I just want to make sure we do it the best way we can do it and make it as convenient as possible for the most people. So let me know in the comments below. Thank you. As I mentioned maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago, my fiance and I are trying, in spite of everything that's been going on with the certain public health crisis, trying to plan a trip. We would love to go somewhere in September, and a lot of you had some great suggestions for places. I think we're leaning towards Texas because my little brother lives in Texas. He is married, he has a baby, and we have yet to go. We've seen him and the baby and his wife, but we haven't been there to see them. He lives in Houston, so we thought maybe we could kill 2 birds with 1 stone, go somewhere maybe on the Gulf Coast of Texas where I guess it would be hot and kind of beachy. I hear that the Gulf Coast isn't great for snorkeling or anything like that because it's very cloudy and muddy water pretty much down the entire Gulf Coast. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I've heard. So we're looking at Galveston-ish area because it's close enough to Houston that we could just drive there and see them. But if you guys have any suggestions, now that we've sort of narrowed our scope to include the Gulf Coast of Texas and within fairly easy driving distance of Houston, let me know. I'd love to hear some ideas for places because I don't live there. I'm not from there. My little brother, even though he lives in Houston, he doesn't know a lot about the Gulf Coast area and cool places to stay. So I would love to have some advice about that. That would be great. And then also some other advice, or I guess just gauging opinion, interest from you guys. As you have seen, I have posted some guitar content on the channel. As you have also seen, I'm not really a very good guitarist at all, but I still enjoy the hobby and I enjoy posting those kinds of videos. I resisted it for a long time. There were people who years ago when I was recording in my apartment, they would see my Vox amp or my guitars hanging up and they'd be like, hey, you should do videos on guitars, instruments, music. And I'd always say, no, 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 no. And it was mostly because I suck. And I didn't want to just like display that to the entire world, but I guess I've just gotten, like, I just don't care anymore. You know, there are going to be people who belittle and deride, but it's fine. And for the most part, everyone's really great on the comments, so it's fine. So I'm enjoying that content. There are things that I would like to do in that vein, and I just want to make sure that enough of you are still interested in that kind of stuff. I know there are many of you who only want pipe-related material on this channel, and that's never going to be the case. It never has been the case. This channel has always been kind of an eclectic mix, probably to the detriment of the channel, because it seems like if you want to really be successful on YouTube, you should pick one thing and one thing only, and only talk about that thing and only do videos on that thing. But I can't help it. I like stuff and things. I like all sorts of different things. I have many, many interests, and so I like to display that on the channel and share that with you. I guess if there's one kind of constant in my personality, it's that I am interested in things. I'm not interested in one thing. I'm interested in many things, and those things wax and wane as the months and years go by. I may revisit something that I was really into, but I'm always like just taking in as much as I can about whatever the new thing is that I'm into. Guitar has been a really big thing in my life for certain periods. What I'm hoping is that as much as I've been enjoying it lately, that I can make it be a constant in my life. So I guess I'm asking advice about several things. First of all, would you like to see more guitar videos? Second, how do you do that out there? And not even for guitar, but any kind of hobby or any kind of interest, anything that requires the development of skill. How do you focus on something enough all the time? How do you maintain passion? Because I am a pretty passionate person. When I'm into something, I really get into it. But like I said, I then move on to another thing and I really get into that. And I would love to be able to be with guitar for the rest of my life, to pursue that for the rest of my life, because it really brings me a lot of pleasure and satisfaction. And it just, how are you into something? How are you into one thing? And I don't only want to be into one thing, but I want something to be a constant, something that I'm always into. I guess pipes could be that, or has been that for me throughout the last 6-7 years. But I'm kind of curious to know, is it that you feel like you just have to choose one thing because you don't have the time or the bandwidth to pursue other things? I don't know. I'm curious because I want to keep playing guitar every single day for the rest of my life. I would love for that to happen. I would also like to have room for other things too. And again, it's always a struggle against time. I work full time, a very demanding, physically demanding and mentally demanding job. I do these videos, I manage 2 YouTube channels, I try to manage my Patreon account. There are so many different things that I'm doing, and so bandwidth and time are definitely issues. But how do you focus on something? Let me know. I'd love to hear about that in the comments. And gang, I would love to hear more from you, and that is why we are going to do the hashtag #AskStuffandThings portion of the show every week. I try to answer questions from the audience on a segment I call hashtag #AskStuffandThings, or just #AskStuffandThings. If you have a question for me and you would like it answered on the show, tweet at SAT Bradley with the hashtag #AskStuffandThings, and I will do my best to answer you. Also, if you are a Patreon supporter, you can write to me there. I also had someone leave a comment last week, I think on the last Sunday Stuff and Things, where they're saying they don't engage with Twitter or any other social media other than YouTube. So is there any other way to get a hold of me? You can try on comments. I do try to read all the comments on my YouTube channel. I try to reply to as many as I can. It's harder for me to go through and pick out questions from the comments. When it's on Twitter, if somebody has @ed me on Twitter, it's easy because I have all these notifications and I can go down the list and I can pick out all the questions because they have a hashtag and everything. So it's a little more difficult on the comments, but you can, I would ask that you do it via Twitter or via Patreon, but I will try to pull some from the comments occasionally if I can. But the first question is from Beth. Ooh, we have a female viewer. Every time I say that, people are like, no, of course there are females who view, but I also have my YouTube analytics and I can see that the vast majority of viewers are men. So it's nice to have a little bit of diversity here with some women. Beth Capel, I believe that's how you pronounce your name, Beth, @Beth Capel, says, have you had any aged tins, I don't know why I said aged that way, of Peterson Dunhill Elizabethan? Are they worth the wait? How do they compare? Thank you. Hashtag #AskStuffandThings. That's a good question. I've had tins that have just a few years on them. In fact, I had some I've had some Murray's tins, but I guess you're asking specifically about the Scandinavian or the STG produced blends, either the older Dunhill and now the current Peterson version of the blend. I think the oldest tin I've had probably has about 4 or 5 years on it of the STG produced version, and it tasted great. I don't know, I'd love to have one that has 20 years on it to see really how like a very, very aged tin would taste. I would say it's worth putting a few away for 4 or 5 years because there is kind of a mellowing and this really nice blending that goes on with the flavors. The fresh tins are great. I think they taste great. Obviously, I think they taste great. I love them. They're my favorite blend. I don't want to say that the aged tins taste better, but there's a different character, and I think it's worth checking out. It's not worth it to me to constantly have a rotation of like, oh, these are all, I put enough every year that every year I can have tins that have been aged for 5 years. It's cool as a little treat every now and again, and sort of as a recontextualizing a blend that I've had so often in fresh form to have one that has a few years on it. It's definitely different. It's definitely good. Not necessarily better, but that's definitely subjective. Anyway, thanks for the question. Next, from 1.21 gigawatts at Ninjatu 889938807. Hey Brad, can you please straighten the photo of the otter? Thanks. The otter? You don't mean Julie, do you? Julie the jumping spider? That's not an otter. That's a jumping spider. Is she crooked? She might be. I think she's a little crooked. Julie. Is that better? I don't know if I can make it stay there. Is that the picture you meant? He does follow up. He says, or I think he, Ninjatu, I'm not sure. I don't mean to sound like a D-head on my last question. I think he means a penis head. I think all the pictures look great as your backdrop. It shows that you took the time to space all the frames. Good work, Bradley. I was only half serious about the one needing to be straightened. Don't worry, I didn't take offense. I'm just confused because I think you might mean this, but that's Julie. That's not an otter. But thank you for the question. Next, this is via email. Dear Bradley, I have been a viewer for a long time and I really enjoy your content. Why, thank you. I feel like you're a reasonable person, and I enjoy hearing your opinion on things. That's why lately I've been pretty disappointed that you won't talk about everything that's been going on lately. I'm assuming you mean like the current public health crisis and all that stuff. I would like to hear your take on everything. Is there any reason why you won't discuss these things on the show? Thanks, Travis. Well, yeah, obviously. And I don't mean to be mean to you, Travis. I'm not making fun of your question, but I have danced around some of these things on the show. First of all, I don't want the show to be political. And even though it seems like these things shouldn't be political, they are, because everything has to be for some reason in our society now. Second, we as a society, and I mean like, I guess the Western world or just the connected world online, we have created a society for ourselves where you can't have discussions about things. You can't give opinions about things because people freak out. And I think that's very sad. I think that's very dangerous. I think it's very destructive to society in general, but that's kind of where we are right now. Even if you say something very innocuous, if it's about a subject that is very charged, you will anger 50% of the people, and 50% of the people will tell you they'll no longer watch your content, or they're going to unsubscribe, or that you're hateful in some way. Like, this is what we've done in our society. I don't want to get in a rant about social media, but it's basically, to me, and obviously I'm on YouTube right now, so you can take this for what you will, but social media has turned our public discourse into mob rule, kind of. And I think it's kind of scary. And I wish that people could just express their opinions as long as they're not being like, see, hateful gets thrown around a lot because I think a lot of times people express opinions that aren't actually hateful, but they're called hateful because they're not the right opinion. Quotes, right opinion. But if you are being blatantly hateful or racist or homophobic or just like not treating other people with the respect that they deserve, that's one thing. But if you're just trying to express an opinion and have a conversation about things, I think it's very sad that that can't seem to take place in our society right now. I hope that changes. There are glimmers of hope that maybe that will change. But where we are right now, it's just not possible. And I think that's very sad. I think this time is going to be looked back upon by future generations as a very strange time where people were getting used to a certain way of life and to technology, and there are definitely some growing pains going on right now. So that's why I can't talk about those things. I wish I could, but I just don't think we can. And I know that most of you are perfectly reasonable and you'd be fine, but even within that, everything is just so charged right now. And if you want to create content and you want the widest net and make as many people feel welcome as possible, because I want everyone to feel welcome, given the current climate and the way things are right now, I can't talk about certain things. And that's sad. But thank you for the question, Travis. Gang, I think that brings us to the end of the Sunday Stuff and Things. Thank you so much for watching. Really, thank you so much for watching. It means so much to me. And thank you so much to our Patreon supporters. The people who support this channel are saints and martyrs, and I love you all. I love you all for watching too, and for sending in questions, and for commenting and sharing and subscribing and all that stuff. It all means a lot. But with the patrons, it's a weird, almost like imposter syndrome for me, where I feel like, why are these people supporting me financially? Like helping me out, helping me with the channel. It's crazy to me, and it's amazing, and I can't thank you enough. But I try every week to do a little bit to thank you by reading out your names, those who support the channel at $25 or more a month. People like Ryan McFadin, thank you. MDoftheNorth, Kirk Crompton, Kirk Crompton Private Eye, Cody Striegler, Ryan Stauffer, corbynborbyn, and Glenn. And then of course, the Maniacs, the crazy people who support the channels at $100 a month. People like Peter Straub and Bob Magee. Thank you both so much. Thank you all so much. Tune in for stuff like this, the first impressions video of John Cotton's double-pressed Latakia. Tune in for the Bloodborne series, continuing every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Tune in for more stuff. Leave your comments and opinions and all that good stuff in the comments section below. And until next time, until we meet again, I've been your good friend Bradley. You've been the audience. This has been Stuff and Things on a pleasant Sunday, Stuff and Things. I'll see you later.